All right, hello there. This video is going to be about classical conditioning. All right, this is one of the classical theories that we have within psychology. It was developed by this guy, all right, Ivan Pavlov with his grumpy face. He should be noted was not a psychologist. In fact, he wasn't the biggest fan of psychology. He felt that we lacked scientific basis for a lot of what we were doing. And so, yeah, he wasn't our biggest fan, even though he contributed this huge, theory to our field. His main area of interest, he was a physiologist, and so he was interested in digestion. And so his research that kind of led him into psychology and developing this theory of classical conditioning was studying the salivation response in dogs. All right, so he wanted to see as dogs were presented with different types of food, different amounts of food, how much saliva would they produce in response to that? Because saliva, it being produced in the mouth, was the first part of the whole digestive process. So the difficulty he found, though, was that at one point he noticed that the dogs were starting to salivate before they were even given the food. All right, and that's a huge problem. It messes with his study, messes with the research he's trying to do, and he's like, what's going on here? They should not be salivating until the food is given to them." All right, it's a involuntary response. It's a reflex. So that reflex should only be activated when the food is being presented. Right, we're the same way. You put food in your mouth, salivation is going to occur. Can't control it. And so he said, just thinking about it, trying to determine what the issue is. And he finally realized, he had the kind of the insight. He's like, what we've been doing is before we come in with the food, we kind of like, we're ringing this bell, right? And then we bring the food in. It's almost like a signal, right? These dogs, he's like, I wonder if they're learning to pick up on the fact that when they hear the bell, food's about to come, right? And we want to put those two together, right? So his basic model kind of looks like this. All right. So you can see in stage one, we give them food and the dog will salivate because that's just part of what happens, right? That's a natural reflex response. However, if you during stage two there, you can see if you just ring the bell, nothing's going to happen because the bell by itself isn't causing any reflexes to be activated. Nothing's happening whatsoever. So what he started to do there, as you can see in stage three, maybe, see, there you go. In stage three, what he started to do was pair the two together. I'm going to ring the bell, give them food. Ring the bell, give them food. Ring the bell, give them food. And he does this many, many times. And what he's able to do is that once he's done that so many times where they've learned that response, you can see there, stage four, at a certain point, all we have to do is ring the bell and then salivation will happen because it's anticipating that food will be given, even if at this point we're not doing that anymore. All right, so classical conditioning is basically the learning of two things and associating them together for whatever reason. And then once that association is learned, whatever originally triggered the reflexive response, an example we looked at with Pavlov with his dog with salivation, whatever that was previously is now being activated by this other thing that was completely random, wasn't causing that to happen before, but we learned that the two were together. All right. So classical conditioning is about learning associations and it focuses on involuntary behaviors. There's reflexes that we cannot control. All right. So there are some different variations to this. One of the other researchers in this area is John Watson. Right. So Watson believed that in addition to like physical responses, he said that emotions, certain emotions could also be triggered as if it was a reflex. And he wanted to test that out. And so he's famous for the little Albert study. All right. So for this one, he had a small toddler. They were given a white fluffy animal to play with. And while he's playing with the animal, he would come behind them and smash together really loud a pot and pan. Right. So he would scare the crap out of that baby. And what he wanted to see was how many times do they have to do that? How many times would it take for the little baby playing with the white fluffy animal, bang the pot and pan really loud behind them? How many times would it take for that baby to learn when you see that white fluffy animal, right? That fear response starts to come. Turns out not that many times. We learn that pretty quickly. But he's showing that we can have an emotional response to something that is happening, right? And so we're going to see this quite a bit in different examples that you could see. One that I always like is, when you were in third grade, you had a teacher who had a very strong rose-scented perfume, but that teacher was very strict and very scary. It always made you feel kind of anxious and worried. And so now, even 20 years later, you smell anything resembling those roses or the perfume that she had, it almost brings back those feelings that you had there about the anxiety and the worry. Okay. So with that, that actually introduces another idea for us to consider with classical conditioning. One of those things is what we call generalization, right? So what this means is you, in that last example, you learned an association between your teacher and her perfume. All right. The perfume is the thing that we want to focus on here. And we want to say, all right, it was rose scented. So what if there's another perfume that smells similar to that, but it's different, right? So when we talk about generalization, what we're saying is that as long as another stimulus, whatever what we're looking at, if it's similar to the original one, the more similar it is, the more likely it will still cause a response to happen. So we can generalize it out to other areas. So the more similar the smell, the sound, or whatever it is that's the trigger, even though it's something different, if it's still very similar to the original one, we're going to say it might still cause a response to happen. Okay. The other thing we want to consider is what we call extinction. All right. So let's say, go back to Pavlov's example of the dogs. What would happen if at one point we rang the bell, gave them no food, right? So they're still going to salivate at the beginning because they've learned that response. But let's say we continue to do this. Bell, no food. Bell, no food. Bell, no food. Well, at a certain point, the dog is going to almost unlearn that association, right? So extinction. The learning that took place is now being extinguished, and over time it starts to disappear, right? So with classical conditioning, again, all about learning an association between two things. And then with that association, it's having an impact on a non or involuntary behavior, something we do not have control over, like a reflex or whatever it may be. That could be a physical response, could be an emotional response, according to John Watson. And so there are a lot of applications for this. If we look at it within education in the classroom, how could we apply it there in your own individual life? Just messing with people. I saw a video once on YouTube where a college roommate or a college guy was doing this to his roommate. And so what he would do, he took a Staples that was easy button. And so he'd hit the button that was easy. And then he would take a Nerf gun and he would shoot his roommate in the back. Right. So if you're shot in the back without being aware of it, it invokes the startle response, right? That fear, we kind of clench up. And so the video is this guy doing it over and over again to his roommate. That was easy, shoots in the back. That was easy, shoots in the back. That was easy, shoots in the back. He does it over and over and over again over an extended period of time. And at the end of the video, all he has to do is hit the easy button, right? No Nerf gun in sight, hits the easy button, and the roommate flinches, right? Gets that startle response. Okay. And so I think that's probably just the last thing to be aware of with classical conditioning. This is something that we have to establish that pattern, and we're not going to do that by just one time, right? This is repeated pairings over and over and over again, right? So it's something that's going to take just a little bit of time, but once that behavior is learned, we will see the change in behavior.